Chad Berger of Berger Bucking Bulls out of Mandan, North Dakota. Chad, thank you kindly for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. How's things in Mandan?
Well, that's great, and thanks for having me.
Well, we'll just get the ball rolling. I'm going to be completely selfish and tell you the whole reason that I wanted to book you was because my dad was always in great admiration of your rodeo stock. Not that we were a rodeo family, but I just know about the long and storied history of it. And I'd love for you to share with folks what your business is all about, what you folks do.
Well, it's it's kind of been in the family a long time. My dad started raising bucking bulls in the mid '60s, and for me and my brother to practice on, and pretty soon he started keeping all the heifers, and pretty soon he had a string of bucking bulls, and some of the best bulls in the world that he raised, the world champion bulls like Little Yellow Jacket and Yellow Jacket and Moody Blues were all world champions, and I always had a passion for rodeo and bucking bulls, just being around them my whole life, and so I started my own company 20 some years ago, and we've had a lot of great success, and it's been one heck of a ride, really.
Literally one heck of a ride on a bull. Nice. I like that touch there, Chad.
and Chad, for people that don't know, I mean, so you got bulls, you got bucking bulls. What makes these bulls buck? I mean, is there a certain way?
They're genetically they're bred to buck. These bulls are out of great lineage, great bloodlines, so they're bred to buck, but you have to get the niche and figure out how they buck the best, and that's what side of the chute they come out of. Bulls are left-handed, right-handed, just like me and you. You can tell when they're young, when they're just babies, they'll always lead with their left leg or their right leg, and then there's a flank strap you use that hangs on their flanks to make them buck a little better, kick a little higher. And the only reason it's a foreign object, and the reason they're kicking so high, they're trying to get rid of it. And God, that's an awful bull buck in there. That ain't one of mine.
Yeah, for those who are watching the live stream, there's just some live stream of bull riding.
Yeah, this is just finding out giving them the best advantage you can for them that's what gives them the upper hand, and that's what you try to find out in every bull you raise or buy. I've bought a lot of bulls. I see them being not handled right or not flanked right, and I'll buy them off somebody, and I'll make them a way better bull than they were when I bought them.
And Chad, we've got an email from one of our listeners saying to ask you, that they heard that the reason the bulls buck is because they've got like a harness or something right around their their sensitive area
over the manhood.
Over the manhood, and that's one of the is that true, or is that just a old wives' tale?
That's a PETA talking point, is all that is.
Okay.
You can't if you ever put a rope around their testicles and pulled it tight. I always tell people, just try that on yourself and see how high you can go. It would literally paralyze the bull, and he would just stand there and do nothing.
Right.
Gotcha. It's all that flank strap, generally, that you see on the back of their flanks, what I was telling you earlier. It's on there just tight enough so it won't fall off. And all that, like I said, it's a foreign object that they're trying to get rid of. And it's nothing more than that. It's these animal activists will come up with all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right.
Let me tell you something about a bucking bull.
Okay.
And especially a PBR bucking bull, or anybody that takes pride and wants their animals to do good. They're treated better than any dog or cat that has ever existed on this earth.
Absolutely.
They're pampered. They're taken care of. 90% of those bulls that you see out there bucking those guys off and throwing the clowns around. You can come to my house on Monday morning, walk in the pen, and pet most of them.
So they're
docile. They're absolutely become part of a family, and so
that's a huge question, Chad, that I wanted to ask is, What's their temperament like when they're not in the ring? And do you have specific breeds that you look for, or is it really animal dependent on whether or not you would use them for bucking stock?
Well, it generally it's genetics but you know, every years ago they bought those bulls out of Florida, out of the swamps and out of the swamps in Texas, and they rounded them up and they were wild animals and they bucked them, and some of them bucked and some of them didn't. But it's gotten to be more of a science now. It's they're genetically bred to buck. They enjoy their job. I mean, these bulls love what they do, and you know, they're like any other athlete. You know, they're going to get hurt. They're going to pull a muscle. They're going to strain a back or do something. But you let them heal. You take them to the vet. You take care of them just like you would a pro basketball player. If he blows his knee out, you're gonna rehabilitate it, and he's going to play basketball again. And that's the same thing with these bulls.
Right.
They're athletes.
Sorry about that. We've had a couple of guests on before, and one of them was an equine horse therapist,
massage
therapist. Do you do any massage therapy or other kinds of muscle therapy with your bulls?
Yes, we do, and I have a chiropractor that shows up about 3 times a year, 4 times a year, and he'll, believe it or not, he'll get their backs in line, and they're like us. They need to be taken care of, and you know, if you're an animal lover like me, a bull lover, you're going to do everything in your power to give that bull the advantage.
Oh, absolutely. And I love your passion when you talk about that, about livestock care, because that's what we want to share with our listeners, is how important that really is. We're going to take
I've won 12 world titles to stock contractor of the year, and it's only one reason, and that's because them bulls are taken care of. There's a lot of guys that got a lot of great bulls, but they're not taken care of. Like, I'm a cattleman, you know. To give you a bigger history on us, our family's been in the cattle business for generations. My grandfather, my dad, me, all cattle buyers, and it's our job to look for anything wrong with an animal when you're buying them. So I think I have the upper hand on most stock contractors because I see things that they don't see, because that's all I've been trained to do my whole life, is to look for blemishes and look for cattle that something wrong with them. When I'm order buying for all these feedlots, I have to make sure the cattle they get are 100%.
Chad, we had a couple of emailer questions that have come in during our last break, and one of them was, they always see some kind of handle or a strap on the back of the bull at the bull riding that they use. How do they work? Is it something that you grab and it wraps around the waist? Is there anything?
Wrist, not waist, wrist.
Yeah, the wrist, excuse me. And then is there anything with it to avoid injury for your arm and your hand or your shoulder?
Are you talking about the bull rider?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's a bull rope. It's a braided rope with a handhold in it, and they use some rosin to make it a little sticky. They pull the rope up tight, put it around wrap it around their hand, and anymore the block is what it's called. It's such a high rise in the handhold that all they have to do is let go pretty much now, and their hand will come out of the rope. Where years ago the blocks weren't like that, and people got hung up a lot, and they still get hung up once in a while and get drug around in the bull. And it's a bullfighter's job then to jump in and try and save him.
I see. So when you're raising these bucking bulls, is there a difference at all from just regular bulls? Is there a difference in how you raise them? You had kind of touched on, you give them some pretty good care, but is there any distinct differences?
Well, the only distinct difference is the mother. On a like an old Angus or Hereford cow, they're gentle and they walk in the pasture and they fall in a hole, and where these babies are alongside a wild cow that, every time they move or see something, they jump, and if they see a hole, they'll jump over it, and that calf is there, and he learns everything from his mother, and that's why he's so catty and athletic and so much more hyper, because he was raised by the same mother that was the same way. And so, yeah, there's really no difference other than the female on an old Angus cow is going to be docile. So the calf is more than likely going to be docile. Where uh, these cows, they're meaner than the bulls. Like the cows we raise, they're meaner than the bulls are, and these calves are raised by them cows, so they're going to be just like them.
Mm-hmm. So I want to touch back on something you said in our last segment, and this is going back to the world titles that you have. I believe you said you had 12, and with the bulls that you've raised, how do you go up that ladder to have one of your bulls win a world title?
Well, I've won 12 stock contractors of the year titles. I've only won about a half a dozen bucking bull of the year titles, and it all goes back to what I was saying, is how you care for your animals and how you know when you have a great animal how to take care of them and to make them the best he can be. You know, I've had world champions, Code Blue and Asteroid and Smooth Operator twice, and Smooth Operator is the only bull in the history of the PBR to win a world title at 10. You know, and that's longevity, and that's taking care of your animals. That's the oldest bull in the history to ever win it, and that's because we took care of him and kept him fresh and kept him healthy. And that's basically, it's the care of the animal that's going to get you a world title. You can have all the best bulls in the world, and if you don't take care of them right, they can't. You ain't going to give them a chance to win.
Right, but how do you
have to give them every opportunity?
How do you get to that level though? Because not everybody can just send their bulls up to the PBR competition. Is there some, like, you know,
criteria?
In a way with sports, is there a league where you get points, you reach a certain ladder rank, and then you get moved up to this next class of riding and so forth? What does that aspect of it look like?
Some of the bulls, like, I take to smaller events and get them groomed and get them confidence. You know, they're just like any athlete. They got to buck them guys off and build their confidence level, just like your kid does in a wrestling match. You know, if you got to take him to a level where he can win, and if you take him to a level above his head and he gets whipped every time, guess what? He's going to say, "Dad, I'm done with this." That's what that bull's going to say. He said, I don't want any more of this, and he'll quit bucking. And so it's an art, and I think, you know, I never quit learning. I'm not saying I got it perfected, because you can learn. I learn something every day, and I'm very open minded, and I'll listen to anybody if I can learn something.
Right.
And
so with
I think we've just done like I said, I got competition out there that's probably got as good a bull as me. But it's the care and the high protein diets I put on, and the exercising, and I mean all the extra stuff it takes. You know, Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson. There was a lot of great players that were probably as good as them, but they never did the work that Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan did. They did. You know, they went out and partied while Magic was shooting 500 free throws. His buddies were out chasing women and raising hell, and they were probably just as good as Magic, but they didn't do the extra work, right?
Right.
And
that's a lot that goes into it. It is the extra work and the extra care that you do. But how do you, with that, what's the scoring on it? Is it how, like, to get into those different levels, those different classes, is it how fast your bulls buck somebody off? Is it the amount of people that they buck off? Is it the level of the person that they're bucking off that allows them to move up or down in this ladder?
The bull is scored just like the rider. Okay, the bull is scored 1 to 50, how great he performs, as well as the rider. Well, if you got a bull that's scoring 44 plus all the time, he's a great bull.
Okay.
And that's how they're rated. You know, to win a world title on a bucking bull, they take his best 8 outs of the year. You go into world finals, and you add them 2 scores in there, and the bull that's got the highest average is the world champion bucking bull. And that's basically how they're rated. And if you got a bull that's just barely scoring over 40 several times, guess what? He's like the baseball player that's in the major leagues and he ain't hitting the ball. guess what? He goes to the minor leagues, and that's what happens to these bulls. They got to go back down, and they get their confidence level back up, and they start showing that they're a 42, 43-point bull. They get to come back, and it's basically how they're rated.
And Chad, what do you do with the bulls when after they retire? You know, you're getting up there in age. All right, they're just not hitting the scores. It's time to retire them. What do you do with them?
Well, the great bulls never leave my ranch. They live here until they die. I've got a grave site along a tree rows out here. Everyone's got a headstone on all my great bulls, like Asteroid, Smooth Operator, Pearl Harbor. Jack Daniels After Party was a world champion PRCA bull. They're all Smackdown, Cooper, Copperhead Slinger. I've got all my great bulls live on this ranch till they die, and they go on I've got a graveyard, and they're all marked so that when I'm gone, then people know what's there. I've got probably a half a dozen bulls that are 13 to 15 years old right now that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to keep them around, but they ain't nobody ever going to eat them because they've earned the right to live out their life, and that's what I keep telling you about these animal activists. An actual beef animal only lives on this earth. Some of them only live 13, 14 months. Wow. And they're gone. They're in the supermarket,
slaughterhouse,
right? And some of them get to live to about 24 months. And then you got your cows and bulls that live longer, but none of them get to live a life like a bucking bull. You know,
how long is the lifespan on a bucking bull?
Well, you know, anywhere from they'll get old. You know, they get old after they're 12, 13, but
so kind of
they'll
like
live
dogs.
to be, some of them will live to be 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
But a lot of them, you're looking at 15 to 18 range. They're like a dog, yeah. As far as aging.
Chad, is there any way you get to judge if you had a favorite out of all the bulls that you've raised and used as rodeo stock?
Well, I've got so many great, you know, I've been fortunate to have probably more great bulls than anybody in the history of PBR, but I always, Smooth Operator, just being a world champion at 9 and 10, and he got hurt when he was 5. I got him back to health. He split his pelvis from his spine. Took over a year to heal him. Then he went and cracked his kneecap, had another year out, and healed him up. And then at the age of 9 and 10, be a world champion. He's got to be one of my very favorites. And I had a bull called Pearl Harbor that I think is the rankest bull I ever owned. That was the reserve champion when he was 5, reserve champion when he was 6, and which, you know, judging, it's by humans, so there's human error. I think he should have been the world champ. And the next year he was so far ahead of everybody that they couldn't catch him, and he went and got a blood clot and passed away at the age of 7. And he was probably one of my, if one of my favorites, if not my favorite.
Now,
There's so many bulls that it's hard to say I had that one, because it's kind of like your kids, right?
Right.
You know, if you told me which one, I have 3 kids. If you asked me which one is my favorite, I'd say they all are. You know, and the bulls are the same way.
Now, Chad, before the bulls, before they expire, and do you keep their bloodline going at all, so you can keep raising
definitely
the top bloodline on your farm, on your ranch?
Definitely. I've got every one of those bulls I was telling you about. I've got calves out of them. I've got hundreds of straws of every one of them, thousands of some of them that we sell the semen out of and we use for our own use. And the lineage, you know, Little Yellow Jacket was born in 1996. They're still sons of his bucking today.
Wow.
You know, almost 30 years later. And heifers that are a lot of his daughters. You know, I'm going to put a feather in the young lady's hat here, but I still say that 65-70% the bucking comes from the female. I think she's the plays more important role in the raising of a great bull than the bull does itself. I always tell people you can take a great bucking bull and breed them to a bunch of Angus cows, and you might not get anything that bucks. But you can take a good rodeo cow, bloodline cow, and throw an Angus bull on her, and some of them are going to buck. So, to me, that should tell you that the female is the biggest part of the whole thing.
Don't mess with mama.
No. And Chad Berger, thank you so kindly for being our guest today. You are a cattleman through and through. This is what you do. This is what you look for on an everyday basis, and you have raised some wonderful stock at your ranch near Mandan, North Dakota.